Apparently this episode has a chimera in it. Personally I prefer the Tamora, but anyway, let's put on our crash helmets and watch Somepony to watch over me. A little bit of backstory first. The TVR Chimera was introduced in 1992 and is often considered one of the more driver-friendly TVRs. Its biggest claim to fame was when BBC's Top Gear used a crash-damaged Chimera as the base for their home-built electric car. Okay, so it's not that kind of Chimera. Focus. Focus. The first problem this episode seems to have is a lack of focus at the start, because when I first saw it was called Somepony to Watch Over Me, I thought it would be a romance story like we saw in Simple Ways. But then I started the episode and saw Sweet Apple Acres and thought it would be about the Apple family generation gap. But then Granny Smith said that Apple Bloom could be left in charge of the farm, so I thought that was the episode. To be honest, any one of these would have made a decent episode and would have started before the 5-minute mark, which is where Applejack starts to worry about Apple Bloom being home alone. This is where the plot and Applejack's overprotecting Apple Bloom goes into full swing. Now I have heard that some people argue that Applejack's coddling Apple Bloom may be related to their parents' deaths. However, as far as I'm aware, there have been no reference to Applejack, Apple Bloom and Big Mac's parents, so I'm just going to consider them absent until something's confirmed. Although for the majority of the episode, Apple Bloom and Applejack almost seem to switch places, with Apple Bloom being the level-headed one that takes care of farm business, albeit while trying to prove that she can take care of herself, and Applejack puts all her energy into a goal with mixed results and levels of logic. Wouldn't it have been easier to just buck the apples rather than put up apple nets? But then at the 10-minute mark, Apple Bloom decides to take the pies in a delivery that Applejack was supposed to do, while Scootaloo and Sweetie Belle pose as Apple Bloom for Applejack. But first, a song. Oh, it was sounding good too. Of course, Applejack finds out and flips out, which makes me question the structure of a pony's hoof, because she chatters on it like it's keratin, but then bites on it like it's flesh. Of course, in the meantime, Apple Bloom is walking through the fire swamp dealing with what I think is the first carnivorous creature we've seen in My Little Pony, and it appears to be intelligent, which makes its actions seem cruel. Of course, Applejack's boots come in to save the day in the end, and the rest of the episode plays out and we're given our moral. Although I'd have thought Applejack would have wanted to hide the fact that she was going to neglect her delivery duty. Although this episode has a lot of problems in terms of focus, logic, and some plot points that seem to make you ask more questions about the MLP world, it's an okay episode. If I had a spare half hour, this episode wouldn't be too high on my list of episodes that I'd watch to fill that time, but if I was marathoning the show I wouldn't skip this episode either. It's entertaining but doesn't really stand out. As for the lesson, I see this episode more for people who are always looking out for someone like a child or a sibling, rather than the person who's being overprotected. Who knows, maybe I'll show my sister this episode next time she's worrying about me. But I do feel kind of ripped off. I didn't see a chimera anywhere in this episode.